Welcome to another day, another unboxing, and I have a trio of Moto One devices here, all in purple boxes. Exciting stuff. Got the Moto One Action, the Moto One Zoom, and the Moto One Hyper. Now before I unbox all three, I just wanted to give you a quick little history. Until the summer of 2018, Moto really had kind of two lines of phones. Well, three if you count the E series. They had the Moto Z series, which is the Moto Mods. They had the Moto G series, which was their bread and butter. And then they had the Moto E, kind of like the cheaper phones. And the G was the mid-range, and that was that. Then along came the Moto One, which was an Android One phone, which was mostly sold abroad, and it was also a mid-range phone. And that spawned an entire line of phones, including the Moto One Vision, which we don't see here, that came out last spring or so, about a year ago. And then we got the Moto One Action and Zoom and Hyper, like, you know, within 6 months of each other, starting in September or so, 2019. So I wanted to play with these for a while, and I finally have them, and I figured I'd just unbox them all at the same time because I feel like they're kind of twins or siblings at least. So let's get started. Let's start with the Action first. So this is the Moto Action. It's the cheaper one of the three. You can get this for about $240 on Amazon. And let's have a quick look. So let's just open this up, and here's the phone. It's interesting because all three of these Moto phones come with a case pre-installed, as you can see here. So that's kind of unusual. Usually the case is separate, but hey, that works. So let me put the phone here, and then we've got the little divider with some paperwork in the middle. I'm not going to go through this because you know what it looks like. There's a little thing to hold everything in place. And then we've got a charger and a charging cable. So USB Type A on one end and USB Type C on the other end. You can see it here, Type C. So that's good. Then we've got the Moto One Hyper. That's the most recent one. So that one's also pretty interesting. Also comes with a case pre-installed, as you can see here. And it's pretty much the same packaging as you can imagine. So here's the documentation, which I'm not going to go through. There's also a SIM removal tool. And we now have, again, a charger and cable. Again, USB-A and USB-C at the other end. Again, no surprises here. No surprises here. That's what we expected. Now, the Moto One Zoom. Boom. Here it is. So that one's a little bit more fancy. There's a little documentation here in the box right away, which is kind of a different presentation. It says, helpful tips. This has an in-screen fingerprint reader, which is different than the others. So that means it has an AMOLED display. And so again, it comes with a case pre-installed. But we got it out, and that's what this looks like. So let's look at the rest of the box, shall we? We've got a divider, some documentation, a different presentation here. We've got also a SIM removal tool, and then we've got the charger and the cable. There's probably a 10 or 15 watt charger. I'll check it out and let you know. So here we go, USB Type C. Now let's look at the phones themselves. So these two seem to actually have been potentially used before. These are review units, so they're being sent to me by Moto PR. Let's remove the sticker from the Action here. That's a satisfying sound. And we now have all three of them bare. So the immediate big difference you notice if you look at them is the Moto One Action has a hole punch. The Moto One Zoom has a teardrop notch, and the Moto One Hyper doesn't have a camera at all in the front because it has a pop-up camera. So I'm going to actually go through each of them really quickly with you. So let's start with the Moto One Action. Let's remove it from its case. As its name implies, it's for action-packed kind of thing. So you're going to say, what does that mean exactly? Well, so what they did here is they put a ultra-wide camera on this phone, which is, you know, par for the course these days. But when you hold the phone in portrait like this, the video is recorded like that in landscape. So basically they flip the camera around 90 degrees, basically making it work like a GoPro when you hold it like this. That's the idea. This can replace your GoPro. So interesting concept. Then I'm going to turn this on so we can see the display. The next thing we have is the Moto One Zoom. So let's remove that case as well. And this one, as you can see, is a lot fancier. The whole point of this phone, as you can tell from the name, is the telephoto camera. And of course, the whole imaging system. Quad camera system. Let's turn this one on as well. Then we have the Moto One Hyper. Now, if you follow the channel, you probably saw my hands-on video. I'll put it up here so you can check it out. This is very difficult to remove. So here we go. And as you can see, it's got the pop-up camera system here and a dual camera system in the back with a fingerprint reader. So let me turn that one on. And now we can see all three of them side by side, and you can see the displays. So basically we've got a hole punch, a teardrop, and a pop-up camera. Now I have some specs here for you, so let's go through them really quickly. So we got some specs here. Let's go through them really quickly. The Moto One Action is powered by an Exynos processor, which is kind of unusual, especially for a Moto phone. That's usually what Samsung uses on their devices. And it is a slightly smaller display at 6.3 inches. It's an IPS panel, and it comes with 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. It has a 3,500 milliamp hour battery, and it costs about $240 US right now on Amazon. So that gives you an idea of what you got there. So the Exynos is an octa-core chip, and so there's nothing to complain about there in terms of performance. The camera systems are as follows. There's a 12 megapixel f/1.8 main camera that has 1.25 micron pixels. There's an ultra wide, which I said is f/2.2. And finally, there's a 5 megapixel depth sensor. That's the third camera. You see probably the tiny little one there. And of course, fingerprint reader in the back, as you'd expect. One last thing about the Moto One Action. It has a 12 megapixel f/2.0 front camera, which as you can see is a hole punch. So now let's talk about the Moto One Zoom. The Moto One Zoom is the more expensive one, selling for $450. And it has a 6.39 inch display. It's AMOLED and has an in-display fingerprint sensor. Has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, and it does have a whole bunch of cameras. Now the selfie camera is 25 megapixel f/2.0. And as I said, there's 4 cameras. So the main camera is a 48 megapixel f/1.7 camera with 0.8 micron pixels, and it does, quad pixel binning, basically combines pixels into super pixels. It has OIS as well, which is very exciting. The telephoto lens is a 3x optical zoom, 8 megapixel f/2.4 with OIS. And then there's a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera, f/2.2. And finally, one of these is a depth sensor, 5 megapixel f/2.2. So this is kind of their imaging flagship in many ways. And if you think about it, for the specs, this could qualify as basically a Moto affordable flagship because it does have quite some nice specs. In terms of processor, it's got a Snapdragon 675. It has 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And, as I said, it's the most pricey of the three. So then we have the Moto One Hyper, and the Moto One Hyper is the biggest of the three with a 6.5 inch display with almost no chin, no bezels. It has no front camera that interrupts the display in any way. Speaking of the selfie camera, it's a 32 megapixel f/2.0. It pops up right here, as you can see. And it's also got a Snapdragon 675, 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Also has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And the price on this one is about $380 on Amazon right now. So that's kind of what you're getting. The Hyper also has an IPS panel. So this is not in OLED, and as a result, it has a fingerprint reader in the back. In terms of cameras in the back, there's a main camera that's just 64 megapixel f/1.9 with 0.8 micron pixels. So it's also one of those 4-in-1 pixel binning setups, but no OIS. An 8 megapixel f/2.2 ultra wide, and that's it for cameras. There is, of course, the front camera as well. So that's the lay of the land on these three phones, and I'm really excited to have them because I've been wanting to try these out for a while now. So let me quickly walk you through the edges of each of them. The Moto One Action has on the right hand side a volume rocker and power button, pretty much what you'd expect. At the bottom is a USB-C port with the speaker grill and a primary microphone. On the left hand side you have the SIM slot here, and that's pretty much it. And then on top you have a headphone jack, which is welcome, and a secondary microphone up here. Now we've got the Moto One Zoom. This has the same layout with the volume rocker and power lock button, which is ridged on the right hand side. On the bottom is the headphone jack, USB Type-C and primary microphone. On the left hand side you have absolutely nothing. And on top is where you'll find another speaker, it looks like, and the SIM slot. So that's exciting. Does it have two speakers? I'm not sure if this is just a mono speaker up here or if it actually has a speaker at the top and at the bottom. Interesting layout though, you don't see that too often. And then finally you have the Moto One Hyper, which I'll walk you through right now. On the right hand side, same setup, volume rocker, power lock key. On the bottom here, you've got the speaker and USB Type-C port. And then you have on the left-hand side, the SIM slot, basically the same setup as the Moto One Action. On top, you have the headphone jack and the secondary microphone. And that's it, folks. That is my unboxing of the Moto One Action, Moto One Zoom, and Moto One Hyper. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a feel for what the mid-range lineup in Moto's world looks like and feels like. 3 devices at 3 price points with some interesting features, lots of imaging functionality, large batteries, large displays, pretty cool stuff. Of course, the Zoom here in the middle is kind of like the, more fancy one, I guess. So keep that in mind. And then, yeah, stay tuned for more videos, folks. Please like this video, subscribe, click the little notification bell below, and then of course tell your friends, comment in the comments below. And don't forget, this is a compliment to the Mobile Tech Podcast at mobiletechpodcast.com. Please subscribe to the podcast as well. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Spotify, to name a few. So you should join and you should listen, because this is where you'll hear my thoughts on these 3 phones. That's it, folks. Stay tuned for more videos soon, and until then, cheers everybody.